I'm sure you heard the saying, what goes around comes around. Yep. And for some weird reason, all these early rulers and leaders of the Xia Dynasty, they don't seem to be able to learn from the lessons that their predecessors left behind. They all seem to be hell-bent on traveling down the same route and making the same mistakes and ending up facing the same consequences. Well, in today's story, we are going to talk about the usurper that got usurped by another usurper. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Apingo and I am the chain-smoking writer. Here we share the myths, legends and histories of the Chinese people, from the first creation myth to the last imperial dynasty. More than 6,000 years of stories, one video at a time. And if you'd like to join us through this journey through time, discovering the rich histories and stories of the Chinese people, remember, give a thumb to this video and a sub to the channel so you'll never miss another episode when it drops. Now, we know that Hou Yi installed Zhong Kang as a puppet king in a bid to kind of appease the political establishment of the Xia court. However, Zhong Kang himself did not really see it that way. He never really gave up the ambition or the dream to one day restore the Xia royal family to real power in court. So when the opportunity arose, Zhong Kang ordered some of his loyal followers to launch an attack against Hou Yi's ally, this fellow named Yi. However, the disparity in their strength and the differences in their powers was so great that Zhong Kang's forces was basically swept aside like it was nothing more than an annoyance. And after the attempted coup, Hou Yi found out that Zhong Kang was actually behind this whole fiasco, and so he imprisoned him. Well, of course, it wasn't really like throwing Zhong Kang into the dungeons or something like that. He is still king in name. So Zhong Kang was placed under house arrest. And although he was still, privy to all the good treatment and luxuries that a king would enjoy, Zhong Kang basically lost all hope and dreams of ever restoring the royal family to power. And with nothing else and nothing left to live for, Zhong Kang died a broken man just very shortly after. So after Zhong Kang passed away, after Zhong Kang's demise, his son Xiang inherited the throne. However, by this time, Hou Yi is wielding enough political and military power and influence to actually disregard the opinions and the thoughts of the old Xia nobles. And so he basically banished Xiang from the capital, from the royal court, and finally, after all these years, he finally installed himself as the new king of the Xia Dynasty, effectively becoming a real usurper. Now, at this time, there was a man named Han Zhuo, who was basically known as a delinquent, rebel-rouser, a ruffian, and he was from the Poming clan that belonged to the Dongyi tribes. And he's such a ruffian and good for nothing that he was exiled from his own clan at the age of 13 for, generally being a nuisance and a rumor monger and, misleading the people with all kinds of lies and fake news and stuff like that. So he is basically an undesirable element in society, so to speak. And when he heard the accounts of Hou Yi and how he schemed and maneuvered his way to the throne, he decided that, Hou Yi was his idol and he was a man worth following and emulating. So Han Zhuo made his way to the capital and used all ways and means to, gain an audience with his idol, the great Hou Yi. And due to his shameless flattery and not a small amount of cunning maneuvering.
I've got a plan so cunning you could put a tail on it and call it a weasel.
Hou Yi quickly, came to like this little bootlicker and took him under his own wings. Now, for the next few years, serving under Hou Yi as basically his underling or being part of his entourage, Han Zhuo slowly earned the trust of Hou Yi through his flattery and, of course, his efficiency in catering to Hou Yi's every whim and fancy. And at the same time, Han Zhuo, was also building up his own power base in the court among the courtiers and among the officials and the office holders. And of course, he did this through, bribery and offering favors in exchange for his influence in court. And he even got into an affair with one of Hou Yi's concubines, this lady named Xuanqi, which we'll talk a bit more about later. Now, through years of, bribes and scheming his way through the courts, Han Zhuo slowly, had most of the court in his own pockets, and these people would constantly and regularly sing his praises to Hou Yi, who by this time was spending less and less time governing and more time indulging in, guess what? Wine, women, and Hans. I mean, what's with all these early rulers and their Hans, man? Like, don't they learn their lessons? God. Yeah, so Hou Yi was, spending less and less time in court and more time with his wine, women, and Hans. And so, of course, he started delegating more and more of his responsibilities out. And guess who got most of the power? Yeah, it's Han Zhuo. Han Zhuo was eventually promoted to the position of a Grand Counselor or Grand Chancellor, basically, the second highest ranking person in the land, just below Hou Yi himself. And Hou Yi left all matters of state with him while he lived his life of indulgence and, debauchery. And while the original followers of Hou Yi, those who were still loyal to him and still holding positions in court, while those people were repeatedly and constantly advising Hou Yi against, overindulgences and, bringing up the stories of his predecessors and what happened to them because of all these indulgences. Han Zhuo went the total opposite direction. He instructed the wineries to produce the best alcoholic beverages for the king, and he picked out more than 100 of the most beautiful women in the land to fill up Hou Yi's harem. And he even trained a special unit of hunters and the best hunting horses to follow Hou Yi on his hunts, just like the special hunting retinue that followed this Taikang back in the day. Kind of history repeating itself less than a few decades later, and there was practically nothing that Han Zhuo couldn't or wouldn't do to satisfy his master's indulgences. And now, with both political and military authority in his hands, and with Hou Yi, oblivious to the world around him, seeing that he was bathing in his wine, women, and Hans, of course he was oblivious to whatever was going around him. Han Zhuo finally felt that it was the right time to strike, and he conspired with some of Hou Yi's retainers who, basically has already switched their allegiance to Han Zhuo by this time and having been in his pocket for years. And most importantly, the other major conspirator in this scheme was actually Xuanqi, the concubine of Hou Yi, who actually had an affair with Han Zhuo himself. Now, Xuanqi actually had a pretty big bone to pick with Hou Yi, seeing that, he actually killed her son. So she was just biding her time to take vengeance on Hou Yi himself. And just like that, without much fanfare and fuss, Hou Yi was actually assassinated by Han Zhuo's men on his return journey from one of his many hunting trips. Yeah, kind of familiar, right? Go to Han, come back, you lost your kingdom. Go to Han, come back, you didn't even make it back to the kingdom. And at the same time this was happening, Hou Yi's followers and most of his family were massacred. And his children were actually captured and taken alive. And while they were, transporting Hou Yi's body back to the capital city, Han Zhuo actually gave an order to have Hou Yi's body minced up and made into meat patties. Yeah, like hamburger patties. Yeah, Hou Yi patties. And in these meat patties, he mixed in potent poisons and, ordered to have these patties fed to Hou Yi's children and descendants. Yeah, that's how, far Han Zhuo went. And to be very honest, this is not the last time that, these sick rulers feed the meat of a deceased parent to their own children or meat of their children to their parent. Yeah, we'll see quite a few more of these instances in future dynasties and future series, so just keep your eyes peeled. Han Zhuo ordered to have these patties fed to Hou Yi's children and descendants, and those who ate the meat, of course, they died a long, slow, horrible death in pain. And those who refused to partake in the delicacy were shoved out of the gates, the city gates, and executed on the spot. Now, seeing how, things kind of just changed and was flipped on its head overnight, the survivors of the Youqiong clan, some of them, deserted their clans and affiliations and fled to far-flung lands outside the reach of Han Zhuo's influence. And those who had remained had no choice but to name Han Zhuo as the new leader of the Youqiong clan. Although, you have to remember this, Han Zhuo was not technically from the Youqiong clan. But, the survivors who chose to remain had no choice but to bow to his authority and name him as a new leader of the Youqiong clan and by extension the new king of the Xia Dynasty. Now, Han Zhuo, of course, did not forget that there is a potentially troublesome loose end that he still had to take care of. And that came in the form of the exiled rightful king of the Xia Dynasty, the son of Zhongkang, Xiang. Now, in order to prevent Xiang from taking advantage of the upheaval that was happening in the capital city, Han Zhuo sent men to track down Xiang and to kill him whenever they find him. And of course, Xiang, having heard the news, went on the run and finally ended up in this place called Diqiu, which is southwest of Zhiyang County in today's Henan. Now, once he reached Diqiu, Xiang got the support of both the Zhenguan clan and the Zhenxun clan. And with their support, Xiang established a small power base at Diqiu. And due to his, diligence and his no small measure of talents in governance and the knowledge of military matters, Xiang managed to restore a small measure of power and influence for the royal family after, putting in 8 long years of hard work. Now, seeing that the royal clan of Xia was slowly re-emerging from the years, if not decades of ignominy, various other clans of the land, they, reached out tentatively to renew their relationships, and some of them actually renewed their allegiances to the royal family, and they kind of form a separate power base from the central court in a way, although they are still very small at this time. And because of this, with some tributes flowing in and the tax income from its own people, the exiled Xia court in Diqiu was actually kind of on its way to regaining a semblance of its former strength. Now, by this time we know that Han Zhuo was basically a scheming scoundrel, but there was no denying the fact that he did have some real talents in governing, and he had more or less a strategic mind. I mean, how else would he have schemed and maneuvered his way to the top, to his position now? And on top of that, his two sons were actually very fearsome warriors who each have their own fiefdoms, and they could actually raise formidable armies on their own. And through years of preparation for conflict, Han Zhuo actually had built a well-trained and well-equipped army, capable of taking on any threat that might come his way. And of course, Xiang and his followers were very well aware of this fact, and definitely they were unwilling to start a war that they knew they had little to no chance of winning. So they were biding their time instead of, rushing into conflict to reclaim the throne. So they were biding their time to build up their own strength while waiting for the right opportunity to present itself for this revival of the Xia royal line. And unfortunately, that was an opportunity that Han Zhuo would never give them. Now, Han Zhuo's eldest son was a man named Jiao, and we know that he is a fearsome warrior, like I mentioned earlier, but at the same time, he was the lord of the Guo lands and the overlord of the Youguo clans. Now, Han Zhuo knew that Jiao had already amassed a formidable army in his fiefdom, so an order was given for Jiao to march his army into Diqiu to annihilate the exiled Xia court, which means Xiang, and all his followers and all his supporters. And so Jiao rallied his men and marched all of them into battle and quickly decimated the Zhengguan tribe and conquered Diqiu. Now Xiang himself was able to escape from this massacre, from this annihilation of the Zhengguan tribe, Zhengguan clan, and he escaped into Zhengxun lands. But Jiao did not give up. He followed up. He chased him down into Zhengxun lands and also made quick work of the Zhengxun clans. And so they were decimated as well. And this time, Xiang was not so lucky. He was killed in battle, and yeah, that was it. That's the end of the Xia royal line, the royal bloodline. That's the end, right? Well, at least that's what Han Zhuo thought. With Xiang and his followers utterly destroyed, Han Zhuo's position, at least in his own mind, was now safe and secure from any form of threats that he could think of. I mean, Hou Yi and his descendants were basically wiped off the face of the earth. The Xia royal bloodline, the rightful kings of the Xia Dynasty, was practically wiped out as well, and so he could finally enjoy the fruits of his years of scheming, maneuvering, of his labors. He could enjoy the fruits of his labors. Finally, he could finally build his own dynasty in his own name. But what he did not know was that the very pregnant wife of Xiang, the Lady Min, actually managed to escape the massacre of Zhengxun by, crawling through a dog hole when nobody noticed. And she managed to make her way back to her maiden home in the Younai clan, which is somewhere southeast of Jining in today's Shandong. And there, she gave birth to a boy named Shao Kang, the last remaining beacon of hope for the restoration of the Xia royal bloodline and the Xia people. Now, this is a story made for TV, made for movies, and your typical revenge storyline. And if you want to know what happened next, don't forget to give a thumb to the video and a sub to the channel so you will not miss the next episode where we talk about what happened next. Did Shao Kang manage to, get vengeance for his people and restore the Xia court? Well, you have to watch the next episode to find out. Now, I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I enjoyed telling it, and if you'd like to support the channel on Patreon, if you can support the channel on Patreon, you can find the links to my Patreon page here and down in the description box together with the links to all my other social media platforms. And I also look forward to your comments and your feedback and what do you think about the story. Yeah, I look forward to your comments. That's the thing that I really look forward to after I put up every video. I do personally go through all your comments and I do try to reply to all of them if I can. And yeah, look forward to your comments. And I guess that's it for today, and I will see you in the next episode.